Do you have a figure for how many new entrants the safeguard mechanism will permit and your projections are expecting?
I don't, I'm sorry, Senator, so I'll need to take that on notice. So it does come down again to that definition of what's an expansion, what's new entrants. It comes down to commercial considerations, and so I don't have a figure in terms of the sort of number of new entrants we're anticipating. Okay. I'm happy to take it on notice.
Do you have either a precise figure or a sense of what proportion of those new entrants are coal, oil and gas operators?
I don't, I'm sorry, Senator, no. I'll take it on notice.
Okay, there are quite detailed figures that have been provided in your emissions projections report. So I'm just a little bit at a loss as to why you're not able to give me the detail of what I'm asking.
That's the emissions projections 2022?
Yes.
So then that's probably a question for Ms Ford.
Yeah, so they're obviously linked. If anyone can tell me how much new fossil fuels are you projecting out to 2030 and what the safeguard mechanism does about that, because it certainly doesn't seem to stop any new coal, oil or gas facilities, and it seems to allow for expansions as well. So just trying to understand how on earth we're going to tackle the climate crisis when this scheme is going to permit new and expanded coal, oil and gas.
So I might be able to answer some of your earlier questions about what the projections assume about some new facilities.
Okay.
So in the 22 emissions projections, I can confirm that no new iron and steel projects are in the projections.
Can you speak louder, please?
No new iron and steel projects are in the projections. Sorry, Can you hear me now?
Yep. Thank you, yeah.
No new aluminium refineries are assumed. Barossa gas is included in the projections.
Yes, thank you.
Berdaman Industries, so chemicals in the Burrup Peninsula, are included in the projections. And the existing Blackwater mine is included in the projections. Mm-hmm. Blackwater South, a potential expansion project, is not included in the projections. And just to reiterate, for the new greenfield coal mines, because of the way we model it in aggregate, we are unable to provide you with a list of new greenfield coal mines included in the projections.
Okay, what's the emissions that you're projecting for them, though, even though you can't name the specific facilities?
That's something, that the team's still looking at, so we need to still take that on notice.
Okay, but that presupposes that there are, in fact, new coal mines. You just can't tell me exactly which companies are proposing them or the amount. You've taken on notice the amount of emissions.
Yes, but we won't be able to give you the amount of emissions from particular new coal mines.
Okay, so confirming for me, though, that the safeguard mechanism doesn't stop new coal or gas.
Sorry, and just to clarify, that's in the baseline emissions projections.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll segue
which
to the
didn't
question
include
about
the safeguard.
offsets.
Yeah, which didn't include the safeguard mechanism reforms in the baseline scenario.
Okay. So will the safeguard mechanism prohibit new coal, oil or gas?
So the safeguard mechanism will set baselines at international best practice for new entrants and decline those baselines at 4.9% a year.
So it won't stop new coal, oil or gas?
No, it won't.
Okay. And it won't stop new coal, oil or gas, and it won't stop expansions of existing coal, oil or gas.
So that's where expansions are a matter for the regulator, whether or not they are classified as new entrants or as expansions to existing facilities. If they are expansions to existing facilities, then they'll be incorporated in the baseline setting process that involves the hybrid, but also declines at 4.9%
Okay,
each year.
But it's not a barrier to expanding coal, oil or gas.
There is no prohibition on new coal and gas under the safeguard, but the safeguard provides a regulatory system under which all the emissions from any new facility or an expansion will be regulated and will be forced to decline towards net zero by 2050.
Okay, is that actual emissions though, or are you talking now about the use of offsets?
So
is it right that the mechanism might allow the actual emissions to increase as long as those companies then buy ACCUs or the new credits to offset their emissions? Is that correct?
Senator, conceivably that is correct, but I think what we're hearing through the consultations is that actually the majority of companies would prefer to do as much of the actual emissions reductions on site as that they can. So I think we need to, we need to make available all of the options to reduce the impact on our total greenhouse gas emissions, and the safeguard mechanism allows the flexibility to do that.
Okay, so just coming to offsets, the recent emissions projection report, which we've discussed a lot today, states that 9 million tonnes of ACCUs will be surrendered in 2030. In that same year of 2030, total abatement is 46 megatonnes, so that's about 20% offsets in that year. Is that about the same for the other years? Can you tell me what proportion of emissions reductions will be met by offsets in each year out to 2030?
Thank you, Senator. So that has been an area of analysis to consider the use of on-site abatement vis-a-vis domestic offsets and SMCs, and that has fed into scheme design elements, for example, the cost containment measure, and is described as part of that position paper. But the government's not proposing to make further details of that analysis public.
Sorry, I don't understand. Did you just say you're not going to tell me what proportion of emissions reductions will be from offsets?
You've got
that
a
has
single year?
We've got them for we've included them for 2030, but that's been part of the government decision that further detail of that analysis won't be published.
Minister, would you like to tell me the answer to that question? I think people deserve to know how much is going to be an actual reduction and how much will just be an offset.
So, taking a step back, the design of the scheme, the purpose of the scheme is to reduce emissions. It doesn't target particular sectors and make differential requirements on different kinds of economic activities in the economy. It simply seeks to reduce emissions. And that, as I think you would appreciate, is the overall objective with the climate mitigation task. It also seeks to introduce an appropriate level of flexibility to allow covered entities to make decisions about the most cost-effective way to get to their 2030 target, and indeed in the longer term to the 2050 target. And again, I think you would agree that we don't seek to pose unnecessary costs on the economy. It is a good thing to try and design a scheme so that such that the costs to the economy are optimised. As a consequence of that, there are a range of ways that covered facilities might meet their obligations. They might make emissions reductions on site, as the official has explained. They might purchase safeguard credit units, which arise because another entity has been able to make much more rapid and deeper cuts to their own emissions in a cost-effective way, or they might purchase ACCUs. The government has released some information about our expectations in that regard, but the analysis that underpinned the Cabinet's decision-making is, for all the ordinary reasons, a feature of the deliberative processes of Cabinet, and it's on that basis that the officer is saying that the whole analysis isn't to be released.
So what's the policy reason for not announcing how much of the emissions reductions under the safeguard mechanism will be from offsets?
Well, I think the officer has already given you some indication about what's expected over the life of the scheme. Could you please?
So in 2030, Senator, we are assuming that 9 megatonnes is used, as you say, as part of the overall task in 2030, and ensuring that that's not double counted in the emissions projections. And so that's the figure that's been published. As I said, that the analysis is also fed into scheme settings, for example, the setting of the $75 cost containment measure, and gives a sense that that's been set above the anticipated price in the years to 2030 as that increases. And overall, as the Minister said, the policy is designed to create that strong incentive for on-site abatement and industrial sector decarbonisation through providing a price signal, providing certainty for facilities who choose on-site investments, and allowing for SMCs to incentivise further abatement from within the sector that can either be traded for commercial benefits or used by those facilities that purchase it to surrender, as well as funding from the PRF that supports on-site abatement.
Look, I do understand all that. I don't understand why you won't tell me what proportion of the abatement will be from offsets. Because it's about 20% in 2030, but what is it from when the scheme starts until 2030? What's the total proportion?
Well, that's going to depend on the decisions that are going to be taken by each of the individual
what are you
facilities.
projecting? Sorry to interrupt.
So while we've done some analysis of the availability of the offsets to make sure that they'd be, enough and so on, and to satisfy the scheme design, the only figure we felt was a useful guide as to what might really happen was that sort of 20-30 proportion, which is 9 out of 46. So you could take that as a rough guide across the other years, but because it's, it is modelling. It's and all of these things are going to be up to the individual companies to make their own decisions. So we didn't think it was useful to have that broader picture.
Is there a limit? Is there a limit? Just one final question.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Is there a limit on the amount of offsets that
No.
a company can use to meet their abatement task?
In the position paper that is currently out for consultation, so the final decisions on these things have not been made. There's no proposal for a limit in that position paper on the use of offsets.